Hi everyone, today we're learning about the Georgian style by looking at the John Potts house, which is called Pottsgrove Manor, this in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Three things that you need to know about the Georgian style are that it emphasized the symmetry of the main elevation and a center hall plan on the interior, and in Pennsylvania, the use of a pent roof to separate the first and second floors. The house was built in 1752. It has a rear wing that was built around 1800, and the wing that we see on the right, the east wing, was built about 1950. It was built on the road between Philadelphia and Reading, which might be considered the old 422. And if we come over here, I'll show you. An old road marker, 17 miles to Reading and 35 miles to Philadelphia. Yeah, so if you'd like to come, here's when they're open. Right now we're looking at it from High Street, from old 422. This is not the elevation that you approach it from now. Right now you approach it from King Street, which is off the back. A lot of you are familiar with the McAllister book, A Field Guide to American Houses. And this book is really outstanding for residential architectural styles in the United States. For the late colonial period in eastern Pennsylvania, at least, we distinguish between the colonial style and the Georgian style. We generally expect the Georgian style to be a little bit more stylish or formal, and the colonial style a little less formal, and it usually does not have some of the distinctive characteristics of the Georgian style. For example, a colonial style house is not always symmetrical in its window placement, and it often does not have a center hall plan on the interior. It could be a hall and parlor or a pen plan house. As we approach Pottsgrove Manor, though, you'll notice it has these really large end chimneys built of brick, and the cornice below the roof line at the eaves is a coved cornice, meaning that it's curved inward. Let's talk about this horizontal feature that runs across the front of the house. This is usually called a pent roof. Some people called it a pentus. On occasion you'll hear someone call it a pent eave, which is really not the right term for what we're looking at right here. This was a common feature in colonial architecture, at least in Pennsylvania, and continued into the early years of the federal period. While we're looking at the pent, let's also check out this extended gable over the door. This is a feature that's not super common in the 18th century, although we do see it from time to time in this part of Pennsylvania. This particular feature happens to be coved, and what that means is that there is a quarter globe that's been carved out of the gable, and I want to show you the difference between one of these gables being coved and one that is arcuated. An arcuated feature like this has a void which represents part of a cylinder. It might be an oval or a round cylinder. Some of you know that doors are a particular interest of mine. These doors are interesting for a number of reasons. When you have a door that's divided vertically like this is called a two-leaf entrance. The way this works is, after you turn the knob and you push in the middle, both doors open into the house so that you can go in. One of the leaves is the independent leaf that can swing on its own. The other one is a dependent leaf, meaning if the other one is closed, that one cannot swing. Another feature that you see here are these benches on either side of the door. This was a common feature in the 1700s in Pennsylvania. These benches made it possible for a man or woman to sit outside the house as the sun was beginning to set and do various kinds of detailed work where they really needed to have the sunlight so that they could focus on what they were doing. As far as the windows, you'll see that they are multi-light windows. These are double hung sash windows, and this was a sort of new thing. The double hung sash is thought to have been introduced in North America in 1701. Where I live in this part of Pennsylvania, it really didn't replace casement windows until right around 1725. And if you'd like more information about windows, I actually have a free window handout that you can download off of my website, and I'll include the link to that PDF in the description below the video. Now let's take a look at this east wing that was built in the mid-20th century. This is the part of the house that contains a colonial kitchen on the interior right now, although it is a reconstruction. It's not overly old. But when they built this, they did try to design it in a way that picked up on the architectural details of the rest of the house, so it really does seem to fit in nicely. One thing that you'll notice is that the really nice stone coursing on the front of the house is not repeated on the ends. This is more rubble stone here, which is less formal, but this is a really common thing in the 1700s when they built houses, to have the one and sometimes two formal elevations, and the rest of them would just be rubble stone like what we see here. We're now looking at the back of the house. This is where you enter today when you come for tours, and you'll see it has this interesting porch there, which dates again to the 19th century. So let's go back to the front, and we'll go around the southwest corner and take a look at the west end of the house. One thing about this house, which is fairly common in this area of Pennsylvania, is that the pent wraps around the corner. And when you see this, this is called a pent skirt. Again, this was common throughout the 1700s and into the very early years of the 1800s here in Pennsylvania. And as we look up the wall, you'll see this other horizontal feature that's like a pent roof. Some people call this the pent eave. It's also called a return cornice or a cornice return, which are really the more common labels for this feature. Now if we go back to the front of the house and go in the two-leaf entrance, you'll see as you close the door that the doors have the appearance of a batten door on the inside, even though they're paneled on the outside. When you have a door that has panels on one side and a batten appearance on the other side, this is called a two-ply door, which was common in this area of Pennsylvania from roughly 1740 until about 1815. The doors on Pottsgrove Manor are really interesting because they have a great variety of ironwork. This one has a really interesting wooden box lock. Sometimes this is also called a rim lock. Most of the other doors have either brass box locks or else they're made out of iron. One of the interesting things about box locks of the 1700s is that they have these huge keys, and the keys have 6 parts to them, and here are the labels in case you don't know the parts of a key. The bow is the round part that you turn once you have the key put in. If you're operating the key from the exterior, the ornament is the part of the key that extends through the door itself. The shoulder is the little section that ends the ornament and separates it from what's called the stem. The stem is the piece of the key that holds what's called the bit that actually operates the lock, and the button is a little piece on the end of the key. Now let's turn around and take a look at the center hall. This was a room that was really introduced with the Georgian style. The woodwork in the center hall has a lot of classical references, such as the cross sets around the doors in the casing, and these pilasters that hold this piece of woodwork under the ceiling in the middle of the center hall. But one of the most interesting things about the center hall here, of course, is the stairs. If you see the newel there, it's a sort of heavy square newel. I've been interested in newels of late. And the balusters are all shaped and they go up under the handrail, and you can see some of the woodworking details there. Let's look at one of the period rooms. This is the room in the southeastern corner of the original building, and it's currently being interpreted as a dining room, although they've moved the table up against the wall to give you more space to walk through. One of the interesting things about Georgian houses is that on occasion, as in a Pottsgrove Manor, you have a plastered ceiling, which was kind of rare in the 1700s in Pennsylvania because, as you know, colonial houses generally had the exposed joist from the floor above that you could see. The room also has this really interesting corner fireplace that you see here, and it has this interesting plate in the back of the fireplace that he had made in 1743 before he built the house. Now let's quickly check out the period room in the southwest corner of the house. This one is interpreted right now as the front parlor, and you can see it also has the corner fireplace and the multi-light windows. It has window seats in front of the windows. The room in the northwest corner of the house is one where they're doing paint analysis currently, and you can see on this door they have exposed some historic marbling. They're not really sure when that was applied. And also I want you to take a look at this HL hinge right here. The part of the hinge that's attached to the door frame is actually covered up by a piece of trim, and they've removed that piece of trim so you can see how it's attached. Those of you who are familiar with my warped sense of humor will understand why I would not call this a period room, but I might consider this maybe to be a question mark room. I hope that you found this to be an interesting introduction to the Georgian style. Pottsgrove Manor is one of those museums that's accessible anytime you want to go there. If you found this to be helpful and you like this kind of content, I hope that you'll subscribe and hit the like button, and feel free to leave me a message below. Thanks.